Good morning and thanks for joining us. Holly Shield here for 𝐊𝐴𝐿 TV, welcoming you all to another edition of Executive Corner Expert Talks, the show where we bring to you industry leaders, successful business owners and market experts all under one roof to help you discover the latest business insights. Today we're exploring one company that's challenging the status quo of the rental property market, Rent Better, a revolutionary platform that helps property owners find and manage tenants without using an agent. Here to discuss it is Mr. Jeremy Goldschmidt, founder and CEO. Welcome to the show, Jeremy. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you on. Now, we know that when it comes to leasing a property, a lot of people would like to cut out the middleman. What are the benefits to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when we look at it, a lot of our customers are really looking to achieve two things. The first and primary thing is often looking for a way to save money and therefore drive up the return on their investment property. But secondly, and I think this is sort of probably a deep-seated feeling that a lot of us want, especially these days, is to have more control over their investment and what actually happens. So when people who are self-managing their property use the Rent Better platform, they'll basically be able to save money and take control of their property, which seems to hit the mark for a lot of people.
Right, and that's obviously, I can imagine money saving is a big factor there. How much money would you say that they do save?
Well, if you look at the sort of averages, and it's always dangerous to play in averages, but if you look at an average rental of around $500 a week, and again, depending on where you are in the country, they'll sort of, average management fees might be somewhere between 5 and 10%. It sort of comes out to a saving of about $2,000 a year per property. Obviously, there are people out there who have multiple properties. So when you add that up over the lifetime of an investment, the actual number ends up being a pretty big one. So I guess from our perspective, a platform where the technology does a lot of the heavy lifting and can save you money, it's a pretty good proposition for self-managing landlords.
Right, and there's certainly a substantial figure there, especially because a lot of these properties are owned in the long term, as you mentioned, over a lifetime, that can really add up. So in your expert opinion, how can owners deal with their properties like a pro without the involvement of brokers?
Well, I think when it comes to property management, there's a lot of process-driven activity, and that's really what we as a platform have tried to automate and bring to a sort of sensible place where, as a platform or a technology-driven platform, landlords have access to the right tools and services at a much lower price because the technology is doing a lot of the hard work. So if you're looking to find a tenant, you can actually create your ads, publish it to the major property sites, handle inquiries, applications. There's tenant checks through the major credit bureau. You can create lease agreements, condition reports. There's electronic signatures. So it really puts you in a position where you're able to find a tenant and drive through a lot of the processes that would be required in a fairly automated and standardized way. When it comes to actually managing the property, that's really where the hard work begins, so to speak, because you're obviously going to try and collect your rent. You want to track it. You want to be able to receipt it. If something goes wrong or payments are missed, you want a very, very clean and simple way to communicate that to your prospective or to your actual tenant. So it's really important to have all of those items documented. When it comes to, again, expenses, maintenance, being able to report for tax time at end of the year. Again, you want all of that tracked and in the one place so that you can always go back and reference where things are at, what's going on, what you need to know. So we find that our customers are thrilled by the ability to access everything in one place and not have it all over the place.
I can imagine so. It sounds like they can really overlook the whole process itself.
Yeah, absolutely. It gives you a lot of control over what's going on, and because there's notifications and alerts built into the system, everything's quite transparent. And I think maybe for a range of reasons, a lot of landlords may have felt that they don't always know what's going on, they don't always have control, they don't always have trust over the people who are perhaps overseeing their property. And so this really gives you the ability to have everything at your fingertips, whether it's through a computer or through your mobile device. You can always see what's going on and you'll always know where you stand.
Definitely, and that is super handy as well. Now, with that said though, how can property owners make the switch from using agents to the self-managing of their property?
Well, that's an even better question. We've got a couple of tools that will help people go through that process. If you were to go to the website, which is rentbetter.com.au, you'll see we've actually got a kit that goes through as a guide the sort of process for notifying and for terminating current agreements, all the things that one would need in order to actually sort of cleanly transition over. And then at the same time, we think there's obviously a number of artifacts that one needs to have in place when they do make that transition. So there's certainly guidance around that. And we actually run a whole series of webinars and workshops that are really educationally driven so that people can be more well informed at the time that they do that. I think, we always get this comment from our customers that it's certainly not rocket science and it's something that they can take on. Like anything, the first time you do something, sometimes it can feel a little bit awkward, but we're fairly confident that it doesn't take people long to get the hang of it and they can really jump into it and sort of take control and start saving money.
And that's really good to hear, and particularly the fact that you invest heavily in the education, obviously, of your clients as well, and as well ensuring a smooth transition is obviously very crucial. And now, dealing with taxes is also a tricky task for landlords, as we know. So do you have any tax tips for them?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, I think there's always this concept of, trying to keep it clean and simple for your accountant. If you speak to any accountant, they'll always tell you that when you see your client at the end of the year, they show up with a shoebox full of receipts. And so we think for a lot of people, what happens is they'll either drop things because throughout the year they haven't sort of kept records of it, or they haven't always kept account of it. So having it through a platform and a system that you can neatly bring it to your accountant at the end of the year, number one, gives you confidence that you've got everything. And number two, it actually gives you the ability to say, well, what else should I have included that I haven't? So number one is keeping all the records in one place so that it's easy to access. Number two, look, I think there's obviously a range of different ways of looking at it. We find a lot of people may not be aware of tax depreciation schedules, particularly if you've got an investment property. So it's worth just sort of doing a quick search on how to obtain one of those and making sure that it's incorporated into your end of year tax with your accountant.
All right, those are some really good points as well there. Now, just before we wrap up, what do you see on the horizon for the Australian property market this year?
Yeah, look, it's tricky. I think everybody wishes that they had a little bit of a crystal ball, and you can see sort of the trends with interest rates remaining fairly low. Obviously, prices have gone up quite high, and it's a question as to whether that's related to the supply levels or just a little bit of uncertainty. I guess when we look at rental prices, there's obviously been over the last 12 to 18 months a little bit of a drop in actual prices, but as you see the actual sales prices pick up, we think the rental prices will catch up to that, and as investors return to the market, it would sort of drive things back up to, I guess, what we would have called normal pre-COVID. And certainly as we see the borders open up again, the expectation obviously is that the sort of 200,000 or so immigrants who typically come to this country each year and are largely renters will just drive up that level of demand, and that'll start pushing prices up higher again. So for those investors who've hung in there, which obviously there's a pretty large number in this country, we think that the sort of return to normality will start to bring a bit more certainty around rental prices, and certainly a sort of bigger level of demand in the market.
Really interesting predictions there, and we might see that ripple down into the rental property market, as you mentioned. So we'll have to keep an eye on that and see how things unfold. On that note, we're just about out of time, but I've got to say thanks so much for joining us today. It's been great to hear your insights.
Thanks very much for having me.
Pleasure to have you on. Viewers, if you've just joined us, we've just had a stellar discussion with Mr. Jeremy Goldschmidt of Rent Better. You can catch this edition of Executive Corner Expert Talks on the 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐼 channel later today. But for now, thanks for your time and stay tuned to 𝐊𝐼𝐼 TV for more live updates.